In this video, we will talk about Python Lambda function. As we already know that we can use diff keyword to define a normal function. A Lambda function in Python is similar to user-defined function, but without a name. So they are often commonly called as anonymous functions. And the Lambda functions are efficient whenever you want to create a function that will only contain simple expressions. For example, with a single line of a statement, or expressions that do not include very complex structures, such as with multiple if-else, for loop, and so on. And the syntax of defining a Lambda function is we use Lambda keyword, then with arguments, where Lambda is a keyword in Python for defining the anonymous function. And arguments is a placeholder that is a variable that will be used to hold the value you want to pass into the function expression. This is quite actually the same as the argument you are defining a normal function with a name. And a Lambda function can have multiple variables depending on what you want to achieve. And the expression, colon with expression. Expression is the code you want to execute in Lambda function. This expression is also quite similar as the expressions you write in normal function with a function name. But notice that the anonymous function does not have a return keyword. So this is the difference between Lambda function and a function using def keyword with a name, function name. So Lambda function has no return keyword. This is because the anonymous function will automatically return the result of the expression in function once it is executed. So we look at a very simple example. So this is a regular user-defined function using def keyword. So diff a function name and with the argument x. So inside the function we return the square of x. So next we can call this function with the passing value 10 to the argument. So the result will get 100. But if we write a Lambda function to do the same task, so we can just write single line lambda x colon x square. Then when we call the Lambda function, then we can use parentheses. The inside is a Lambda function. Then next is the parentheses to pass 10 to the argument of x. The result is the same as this one. We get 100. And we can also assign a Lambda function to an object called the result. Then we can call this function using result parentheses 10. Then the same result 100 will be returned. So next example is a Lambda function containing simple conditional test. So we can write a Lambda number, this argument. The inside the function, odd number, we can print odd number if number not the remainder of the number divided by 2 is not a 0. Or else we can print even number. So when we call this function, we can use print function name, function the object is a Lambda function, then pass 20 as the value passing to the argument. So we show this in Python. So we first define a regular function. Then we call this function and passing 10, get 100 in the result. Then we can use lambda function, lambda x squared after the column. Then we can also directly call this lambda function by passing 10 to the argument. So the result is 100. So we can assign a lambda function to the result object. Then we can call this function by passing the value, get the same result. So lambda function which contains simple conditional tests. So if it can be divided by 2 without remainder, then we show the even number, else it will odd number. Create this lambda function and assign to an object called QQ. So we can call this function by passing an even number, then result is even number. Then we're passing an odd number to this function called odd number. So sometimes you can also invoke a lambda function return value to perform various operations. So we create a lambda function called concat. The job for this function is to join each character in a string, but is only this element is not a digit. So we join odd alphabets in a string. So we create this lambda function and assign to concat object. So next we can print a string first, then call this function with a string Wilson32 as passing value. So the result is print with field number column Wilson. Another simple function is in lambda function is add exclamation symbol after a string. So we create this lambda function and assign to an object called doExclaim. So this will act as a function. So next we can print some string, then print the result of calling this function with a small sentence as the passing string. That is I like programming. Add a space, add an exclamation. And next is find the sum function. We created use lambda with n as argument passed, and the function statement is sum with the intervalue of each element of this string. So we first change a number to string type, then get elements of this string. Each alphabet will take out, then transformed to the integer, then sum these integer values. So next we can print the result. First is a string, then call this function with these numbers. Actually this is a string as the input. The result is 8. A lambda function will get more helpful when used inside a function. And these functions are map function, filter function, and sorted function. So first we create a list with 6 string, and actually this is a number, but form is string type. So first we will see how to sort this list. sort this list by the key is a lambda function. So we print the result sorted numerically. Then inside the print, next is the sorted function. And the sorted function is first is the list as the input. Then next is the key. But what is the key? Key is actually the lambda value. The lambda value by passing this list as argument to this lambda function, then return the result to the key. So this function tells we will get integer value of this list, each element of this list. Then this list of integer value will be the key for the sorted function. So this means the integer value of this list of string will be sorted from the lowest to the highest. So we learn this. So this is correct, from the lowest value to the highest of integer value of this character list. Next is a filter function. So filter function acts as a function first to the object. Here is the object. So only the elements of this object meeting the criteria in this statement will be returned after the filter function. So we call this first is print some information, then inside we use a list function because field will return iterable, so you have to use the list. You have to use the list to get the result of a list. So field itself will not return any list. It's iterable. So we print some information. Positive even numbers have been excluded. Then next, the result will be printed, and what it is? It is a list of what? List of a field functions result. And how it is filtered? It is a function based on a function. It's a lambda function, and the criteria for this field is a lambda function that says this element's integer type divided by 2, so remainder is not 0, and its value is not larger than 0 because we add not here. So these two criteria will not be met, then the result will be returned from this object. So we call this function and print the result. So the result is positive even numbers have been excluded. So only the odd numbers and the negative numbers are returned after the filter function. So next function is a map. So map's form is assign a function first. Then also next is the object. And map will run this function upon each element of this object. So this map, inside the map's function is a lambda function. And this lambda function says the argument of x integer type plus 10 first. Then it is transformed as string. So if we map this function to this list of string, it will first transform each element of this string list to the integer type, then plus 10 to each one, then we will transform back to string again. So we print a string first, then use the list, because map also will return an iterable. So iterable alone has no information to be printed out as a list. So you have to use list outside of an iterable. So list map, list field, this is very often used type. So list field and a list map. So we run this function. So that each element of the original list have been plussed with 10, then transformed back as string type and put in a list, because we use a list here. Thanks for watching.